Hi everyone, welcome back to my Robert Zemeckis series. This is the 4th episode, and I'm going to be talking about his follow-up to Back to the Future, which was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which came out in 1988. This movie is based on a novel called Who Censored Roger Rabbit, and the screenplay is credited to people other than Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. This was my biggest surprise when I went back and looked at the credits. It's credited the novel's by Gary Wolfe, but the screenplay for the film is credited to Pete Seaman and Jeffrey Price. And looking at a few of their other credits, such as Shrek the Third and The Grinch and the Queen Latifah comedy Last Holiday and Wild Wild West with Will Smith, I find it a little doubtful that those two guys actually wrote the Roger Rabbit script. I'm sure they wrote a script, but there are these union regulations for the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, saying that the original writers, the first draft, have to be credited with the script no matter how many people rewrote it. So my guess is that Zemeckis and Bob Gale, who normally write together, on the scripts that they've done, rewrote the script that had been done by the other two guys, and of course just didn't get writer credit on it. I rewatched this a couple of days ago, and I've got to say I have seriously undervalued this movie over the last 20 plus years or so. When I rewatched Romancing the Stone, I was prepared to recommend it, but then I discovered I really didn't like it all that much. I didn't think it was that good. Well, this movie I was also planning to recommend. It's pretty good, you know. It's fun, it's exciting, you know, it's well made, but it's not one of my favorite Zemeckis films. Well, I was dead wrong about that. I rewatched this movie and I was just dazzled by this thing. The plot is so intricate, and the script is so tight, and all the technical aspects of the movie are just amazing. You know, watching it, keeping in mind exactly what went into the making of this film. If you don't know the story, it takes place in the 40s in Hollywood, and the premise of the film is that animated characters aren't drawn onto film. They're actually actual sort of people that act on camera in cartoons. So cartoons are actually filmed with a camera, and the toons, as they call them, the characters who are animated as opposed to human beings, they bounce around the set and the camera captures it rather than being, you know, drawn by animators frame by frame, which of course isn't really the case, but it's this alternate universe version of old Hollywood in the 40s, which is really quite exciting. Warner Brothers, which does Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and, Donald Duck and Porky Pig and those guys. They collaborated with Disney, which of course owns Mickey Mouse and Goofy and Donald Duck and what have you. And so you have a whole sort of these two worlds of animation that were normally separate coming together and all playing supporting characters in this story. And of course all the animation itself is actually hand-drawn. I don't know how many years in advance of the release that the actual live-action parts of the movie were filmed, but I'm guessing maybe, you know, a couple of years. I'm guessing that they did principal photography in like '86 and then spent the next 2 years animating everything because there's a lot of really elaborate scenes in there. And just taking into account all of the things that had to be manipulated on the set in order to make it look like the animated characters were interacting with their environment. This was before CG. I mean, you know, nowadays if you want an animated character, you could just have him interacting with CG doors or chairs or cars or things like that, or CG props. But they had all the props live on set, which means they had to be suspended by wires or rigged by little robot arms or puppet arms or whatever. And then the animated characters would then be painted over those things. There's a scene where Roger's been dunked in water, and as he's basically squeezing his ears to wring out the moisture from his ears, he's wearing handcuffs. And the handcuff basically had to be positioned in such a way to reflect exactly which way his arm was pointed as he's squeezing his ears out. And I'm thinking, somebody had to go to the trouble to figure out exactly what angle the handcuffs had to be at without an actual arm in it in order for the animators to insert Roger in afterwards. There's all kinds of, chairs being moved, car doors being opened and shut, boxes being knocked over, chairs being, it's just, lights being hid and dishes falling over, record players being used and things like that. All this stuff happens. Guns being carried, actual, live guns being carried by animated characters, not animated guns. I mean, all this stuff had to be coordinated painstakingly on the set. Who knows how long each of these shots took to make, and then all the animation had to be done on top of that. Really, really something. Really amazing. The main character is played by Bob Hoskins. He's a private investigator, a former cop in LA, but he's a PI now, who has taken a lot of jobs for Toons in the past. He's been hired by Toons to sort through disputes or, wrongful criminal charges, that kinds of thing. So he's sort of been a hero to the Toon community. And he had a brother, his name is Eddie Valiant. He had a brother who got killed, unfortunately, by a Toon some years before the film actually takes place. So he's sort of not cool with Toons anymore. He doesn't really like them, doesn't want to associate with them, and he definitely doesn't want to work for them. Well, he gets this job from one of the guys running one of the cartoon studios, a guy named Maroon Cartoons. And he's told that one of the animated characters, named Roger Rabbit, has a problem with his wife, Jessica. Jessica's been fooling around, apparently, with another guy, and he wants Eddie Valiant to take some pictures so he can show them to Roger and say, see, your wife isn't any good, you should leave her, get rid of her, don't keep torturing yourself over the fact that you can't make her happy. So he takes the job, but then things just get way, way more complicated there. After the guy who Roger's wife was having this relationship with gets killed, supposedly by Roger. And Roger comes to Eddie, afterwards and says, look, I didn't do it, you've got to help me clear my name, you've got to help me. And of course Eddie doesn't want anything to do with it. Meanwhile, Roger's being hunted down by the authorities. And so, there's possible criminal consequences to Eddie helping him. One of the biggest gags in the movie involves Roger's wife. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the character of Jessica Rabbit, even if you haven't seen the movie. Jessica isn't an actual rabbit character, she's a human Toon character. And what a human. She has a ridiculously proportioned body, long flowing red hair, and she's voiced by Kathleen Turner, who of course was the main character in Romancing the Stone. There are so many gags and jokes about her tits in this movie, it's ridiculous. They stick out through the doorway, 3 seconds before she actually walks through. It's nuts. Anyway, she is basically claiming to be a pawn in this whole scheme involving blackmail about real estate deals, and things just get more complicated from there. In addition to that, you've got a character named Judge Doom. That's not a very sinister name, is it? Judge Doom is played by Christopher Lloyd, who of course played Doc Brown in Back to the Future. And he is up to no good. He has developed this turpentine mixture called the Dip, which is apparently the only way you can kill a Toon character. I mean, you can drop all kinds of things on their heads, smash them between cars and buildings or what have you, but they're cartoons. They'll pop back to, into their regular shape and they'll be just fine. Well, the turpentine thing apparently works on animated characters, so that's what everyone's afraid of now. So all these plot threads kind of come together in really clever ways. And there's this segment in the movie where, while pursuing a criminal, Eddie has to go into Toontown, which is sort of like the Toon neighborhood, and all the buildings have faces on them and they move and talk, and there's all kinds of familiar characters flying around all over the place, and it's just sort of a crazy place. They only spent about 10 minutes there, but it's a really fun sequence. Now, as technically impressive as all that stuff is, my favorite scene in the whole movie is one where Eddie is reminiscing about his past and about his brother who got killed, who he misses very much, and the fact that he and this woman played by Joanna Cassidy, Dolores, who runs basically a bar across the street from the detective agency, we're all very close together. And there's a shot basically that starts late at night with Eddie looking at some old photographs, and he looks across the desk at his empty partner's chair and all the sort of famous case newspaper clippings that are laid out everywhere. And the camera starts to move across all these newspaper clippings and taking in sort of a whole history of these characters that really isn't even talked about. I didn't even realize until just this last time I saw this movie that Eddie and his brother they were the sons of a circus clown. And so they started out working in the circus, and then they became cops. And there's a portrait of all the cops graduating from the police academy in their year, and they're standing together with clowns' noses, and it's generally portrayed that they're well-liked guys, goofballs, but good guys. And there's another picture of them as they're starting their detective agency along with Dolores. The photograph from the newspaper is titled "Two Flatfoots and a Floozy." And so you get this great history, basically, in just a span of a few seconds as the camera goes over all these old photographs and newspaper clippings. And finally, when the camera rises up again, you see Bob Hoskins asleep at his desk, and now it's daylight. The whole thing was actually a big transitional scene from night till morning, you know. It's very, very clever. And plus, my favorite theme of the movie is in that one. It's this very kind of sad, but not overly sad theme with a trumpet solo. It's a great piece of music. Yeah, I've thought well of this movie over the years, but this last time I saw it, I was just so much more impressed by everything about it. Everything about this movie is just great. So yeah, I definitely have to put it amongst the very best of Zemeckis' movies. And you haven't seen this movie, you like animation, especially the old classic characters, you're going to love this thing. It's great. So, thanks very much for watching. I'll have the next video up in a few days or so. I'm not exactly sure when, 2 or 3 days. It's going to be on both Back to the Future 2 and 3, which came out within like 6 months of each other. Before they did it with Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2, they did it with Back to the Future 2 and 3, so that will be the next one. Comment, you know, if you'd like to, if you have an opinion about Roger Rabbit, do a video response, whatever. There's a link below into the playlist of all the Zemeckis videos I'm putting together, up to which will include Flight once I see that in a few weeks' time. Yeah, if you want to do a video response, I'll add you to the playlist. That would be great. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take it easy.